Well, hello everyone, and welcome to session one of the AMBA and BGA Festival of Excellence. I can see a lot of you are slowly joining the session just now. We're just about ready to start. So really excited to welcome you to our week of lots of virtual events, really celebrating excellence in MBA education, learning, and practice and leadership. And I'm thrilled to announce the first session, which is Securing Success Post-MBA. My name is David Woods-Hale, Director of Marketing and Communications at AMBA and BGA. And shortly, I'll hand over to Anna Howes, who's Global Head of Education Services at our headline sponsor, Blue Prism, to chair the session. But before I do that, just a little bit of housekeeping. We want to keep this session as interactive and involved as we can. So if you've got any questions at all during the discussion for the first hour, just pop them in the little, you'll see a little box at the bottom of your screen saying Q&A. So just pop your question in there and Anna will be able to see that and she'll be able to share that with the panelists for you. And for the last half hour, so about an hour from now, for the last 30 minutes of the session, if you want to, you'll see a little button at the bottom saying raise your hand. If you want to raise your hand and ask a question live to the panel, that's absolutely fine. So just do that. We'll find you and turn your camera on and you can just ask away. Just let us know who you are and perhaps what your business school is as well, just so as we have a bit of an idea and a bit of background. The whole session is being recorded, so all delegates will receive a recording about a week after the event. We'll send those across to you via email. And I think that's all from me. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Anna to start the session. Anna.
Thank you, David. And thanks everyone who's joined today. It's such an interesting topic we're going to be discussing, and I'm very, very honored to be joining the very first session of this festival, Securing Success Post-MBA. Very interesting. And we have a bunch of amazing people joining us today. So in no particular order, we have Ehab Abdelhavez joining us from Johnson & Johnson. He's a head of talent acquisition. We have Stephanie Mullins. She's Associate Director for Blue Sky Education. We've got Ritika Israni. She's a Vice President for Israni Telecom Private Limited. And we've got Udo Richson, who is a Manager of Strategic Projects for Eli and Lilly Company. And both Udo and Ritika were winners of Student of the Year award in the last 2 years. So I thought it would be a really good thing if we can, break the ice a little bit and do a little bit of introduction. So Ehab, would you like to say a little bit about your career to date and why have you joined the session today?
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for inviting me today and welcome to the 99 and counting attendees that we have today, and welcome to the panelists as well. My name is Ehab. I lead the talent acquisition function for Africa, Middle East, and Turkey. I'm based in Dubai, and yes, working currently in Johnson & Johnson. I've been working in the FMCG and the consulting space for the past 14 years, and would love to learn more about your thoughts about the coming periods after completing your MBAs and sharing any insights that can be useful during your journey. So welcome on board.
Thank you, Ehab. Stephanie, would you like to go next?
With pleasure. Thanks, Anna. And yes, as you said, I'm Stephanie Mullins and I'm Associate Director at Blue Sky Education. And we are a PR agency that works exclusively with business schools. I've worked with business schools all over the world, and I've been doing so for almost 8 years now. And as part of my role, I have spoken with hundreds, if not thousands, of MBAs and MBA alumni and students, and learned about their journeys and how they've secured success after their MBA. So I'm very much looking forward to taking part in this session today.
Awesome, thank you. Ritika?
Sure, thank you so much, Anna. Hi everyone, I'm glad so many of you, 113 of you, have joined this session. Really glad to be here today. My name is Ritika Israni and I'm the Vice President of Israni Telecom, as Stephanie mentioned. I also run my own charity named Sparsh. The charity is headquartered in India, but we do events globally. I'm currently based in Dubai, where I take care of business development of my family trading company, which is called Ocean Petro Gulf. I finished my MBA from University of Bath. I mentor quite a lot of MBA students on a pro bono basis, and I do hope that my experience can, give you some helpful tips and advice on how to make the most of your career while you're on the MBA and also post your graduation. So thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to chatting with you soon.
Thank you, Ritika. And Udo?
Hello, everyone. I'm
No.
glad to welcome you to the session. So my name is Udo Richson. I'm from Austria. I have a background in life sciences, actually. So originally studied molecular biology and later immunology. However, I pivoted later in my career and then shifted into research funding, where I worked for the Austrian National Funding Agency as a EU program manager and also as a delegate to the European Commission for some big funding program in the European Union. Then I did my MBA in 2019, and since then I've actually made another pivot, and I'm now working in the pharmaceutical industry at Eli Lilly as a manager for strategic projects. So I've had quite a journey. The MBA has really also played a big role in kind of making that shift, and so I'm happy to share what I've learned so far, and I hope I can bring some value to that session.
Thank you all. And I'll just do a quick introduction. I don't have an MBA background. Mine is very technical, computer science, mathematics, and neuroscience, but I'm very, very honored to be here today and to speak to all of you, really. So I am a global head of education services for Blue Prism. And we were really interested to be talking to all of you because everything that we do is about how we're going to work in future, and who best to speak to than the future leaders. So I would like to kick this session off then with a first question for our panelists, and that is, what are employers looking for from MBA graduates specifically? So some of you have graduated recently, some of you have graduated maybe not so recently. So when you got your first job, what was it that you kind of noticed during the interview that employers were looking for the most? So Stephanie, would you like to go first?
I think it might be best for Ritika or Udo to kick off with this one. Since they've been there, they're probably the best people to kick off with this one.
Okay.
Sure, I'm happy to start if no one else is that eager. So basically, yeah, it's a good question. I think it really, first of all, it depends on the employer, of course, because I think everyone is looking for something slightly different, also depending on the sector. I was very focused on the pharmaceutical sector, obviously, and what I saw is that nowadays there has been a kind of a shift. They used to have let's say a narrower scope when hiring, often looking for people that had a certain background already that was connected somehow to the industry. Nowadays, they are really also much more open for different profiles. However, I think what always is in the focus are the transferable skills that really need to stand out. And obviously, what you really are looking for are people with potential that can kind of develop into future leadership positions. And so I think there are a couple of keywords you often hear. It's certainly things as creativity. I think something that is also very much valued nowadays is certainly emotional intelligence. I think this is really becoming more and more important in hiring, but then also, of course, things like the ability to think strategically and to really have those people skills in place, apart, of course, from other, let's say, more technical skills that are required for the job, I think are certainly, yeah, important.
I'm happy to build on Udo's point. Actually, he raised quite a few good elements that employers look for. One thing I'd like to add is, I remember back in the day when I looked for my first job post, my undergraduate career or post my MBA. I remember, since my previous background involves, a family business, that used to be looked down upon because, employees used to think that she comes from a family business background, we're going to teach her everything, train her, and then she's probably going to go back in the family business. But I think today the mindset has changed. Today, a lot of employers do appreciate, respect, and admire an entrepreneurial mindset, because that brings a new flair to, their company or the specific division you're looking in. I think also it's very important for graduates to have flexibility. I remember, going in for interviews and stuff, I've met other candidates who've been very close-minded that, this is what I'm looking for and this is exactly what I want to do. But I think being open-minded and being flexible to a certain extent is extremely crucial, because, given today's environment and, the VUCA world that we live in, I think being open-minded is very important, because you may go in looking at a very specific job profile, but each day is going to be very different. So I think it's important to stay positive and flexible through this all, because I mean, nobody knew that COVID was going to happen. Nobody knew, how we're going to all start working remotely, how we're going to have this AMBA thing remotely. So I think that flexibility is bound to bring you success and, less disappointment, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Definitely. And I think just building on those points there, um, it's really interesting because both Udo and Ritika have these really important aspects, such as an entrepreneurial mindset or emotional intelligence or flexibility. And these are really key buzzwords that a lot of employers are looking for. It has to be authentic. So it's no good filling your CV or talking to people and thinking you're saying all the right things without it actually being in place within you and within your capabilities. So ultimately, I'd say authenticity is key, because you don't want to say, oh, I'm a team player, but I work very independently. You want to be yourself and not try and pitch someone that you're ultimately not.
Mm.
And Steph, this is a very good point, and if I may, from like an employer standpoint, if I may share as well, some of the thoughts, and I'd like to echo what all the panelists mentioned in terms of like the less emphasis on technical skills and the higher emphasis on people capabilities and leadership potential. And I think one of those key things, and I think again, Ritika mentioned about like the VUCA world and how things are quite changing, is the learning agility as well. So how are you learning, unlearning, relearning as you go? And the MBA should not be looked at as like the end of the journey, but really just like you are starting your learning journey or continuing your learning journey. So this is definitely a key one. And on the authenticity piece, one of the things that you will find yourself being asked in interviews, for example, is just, especially in multinational organizations who are doing like behavior-based interviews, are asking about like specific examples that you can demonstrate what you are saying. So if you're saying I'm a team player, find them asking you, give me an example, what you have done that demonstrates this team player. So part as well of how to prepare for that is not only just looking at those buzzwords, but as well as a reflection of those buzzwords on your own experience and what you have done. And this can be in a professional context or even within the educational context that you had within the MBA. So just few thoughts on that.
And I agree with you guys. I mean, I know when we hire people as well, we do also look at the soft skills, ability to prioritize, ability to work together in a team, because that's really important. But in particularly the understanding of the digital impact on businesses as well, which is why we would want anyone from MBA to come with that knowledge or willingness to explore and to be up to the current trends, really. So all of that are really helpful, but I think soft skills are becoming more and more really important. Now, Ehab, considering your role, and you touched on the recruitment as well, what would be particular, I guess, skills or how would an MBA student pitch themselves the best during a recruitment? So what would basically they need to do to be successful in landing in a job that they really want?
So basically, let me start with that. This is not specific for MBAs, but for everyone. So when you are actually applying for a job, whether this is Johnson & Johnson or any other organization, you need to really look at the details of the job, understand how this job fits you, your background, your experience, your qualifications, but as well as your personality and individual capabilities, and making sure that you are demonstrating this kind of fit between you and the role, and more importantly, you and the organization. In many situations, actually, because if I ask the 127 attendees about Johnson & Johnson, for example, maybe one of the sectors that they would come into their minds is consumer sector. But for example, Johnson & Johnson has medical devices and pharma, and doing this like understanding and homework before going into like the interviews is really important, and give further insights and implicit kind of signals to employers about how keen you are and how like understanding you are to the organization that you're applying for. So this is one. The second thing is basically there are specific programs for MBAs in general and people who are holding master's degrees, and there is always keep an eye on those programs. And those are like, again, in all organizations, you will find those programs, and make sure that you are going into internships while you're doing your MBA. Once you conclude your MBA, you understand when those programs are getting advertised. Socialize with not only with HR but with like the business leaders whom you eventually would like to work with. Because again, and I always say this, an HR or a talent acquisition professional on LinkedIn, for example, they will receive hundreds of messages on a daily basis, but a business leader not necessarily getting the same number of messages. So the odds of them seeing your message, responding to it, especially if there is like, a synergy between your background and the field that you're interested in and their function, I think the odds are much higher. So those are like kind of few things that you will need to get you at the door. Let's put it that way. And then when you are there, again, all the capabilities that we've mentioned and all like kind of the authenticity as well as the leadership capabilities will need to be there and demonstrated in order to be able to progress ahead.
That's a really good point. Thank you for that. Ritik, Udo, Stephanie, do you guys have an opinion on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was just thinking when Ehab mentioned how this process usually works and how you can really make sure you stand out. It just reminded me a little bit of my own journey, and exactly the point also you mentioned, Ehab, about internships, about being able to kind of make yourself visible. That is super, super helpful. So in my case, that was really how things worked out for me. I first started with reaching out to colleagues, to peers that were actually working at my target company. So it all starts with really understanding where do you want to go and what is it that you really want to go for. And you have to really be very confident that this is the direction that makes sense, where you can bring the most value and put your talents on the table. And once you know that, you reach out, you learn about the company, you understand how the culture is there, how this is a match, and so on. Once you've figured that out and you submit your first application, so often an internship program is really a great first step, because very often they're kind of the gate towards these MBA programs. And that is super helpful because you get the chance to really work there, to get to know the team, to get to know the products they're working on, the projects they're doing, and you can also show what you're capable of. So this worked extremely well in my case. Like for both sides, we were really happy with getting to know each other, with being able to work on projects, and I was able to really bring some value to them. So I was working directly with the general manager for the Austrian affiliate. At the end of my project, I got the chance to present in front of the entire executive team of the Austria, Germany, Switzerland hub. So that really gave me also already access to those leaders, and I was kind of in touch with them for my project as well, and that was really great because we all got to know each other. So once the time came to decide if I would kind of be forwarded to the MBA program, it obviously helped a lot already that all of them knew me and we all had similar expectations on how that could work and would be a good match. And so that's definitely a recommendation to try early in your MBA journey to build these connections and leverage that. And then, of course, make sure you can really also show what value you can bring to that company, to that sector.
Yeah, if I could just put on Udo's point as well, for me as well, quite a similar experience on my MBA. I participated in quite a few case competitions when I was at Bath. One was at ESADE in Spain. It's called Leading Futures. You can look it up. There was another one in Amsterdam, which is called the Amsterdam MBA Challenge. And I'm sure all of these are still happening, virtually and remotely. For me, not just because I won the competition, but when I pitched the idea to, the panel of judges, it sort of made me establish that initial connection with the judges. And then, we followed up, we kept in touch, and close to when my MBA was ending, the opportunities just emerged. And the fact that, I had participated before and they had seen the way I present, or, the idea that I had put in, that just made it a lot easier to sort of, cross that initial mark of, getting through. And it really helped me. And, whether I accepted the opportunity or not, it did emerge. And, it's also very promising and validating at the end of the MBA when you have, so many opportunities that come up regardless of what you choose or what you pick. So I would really encourage you while you're on the MBA, do step out of the classroom, do go for these case competitions, because it's a great learning experience. It's a great networking opportunity. And this is how roles and opportunities emerge. And, sometimes it's also that you get exposed to something that you don't actually know that you're interested in. Like for me, one of the case competitions I participated in was about blockchain and procurement. It was something that I actually knew nothing about previously, but then it made me realize, okay, this is something, which could be a potential option for me. And a short term, exercise actually converted into a nice full-time role. And then, I also had the opportunity to do my long thesis on it. So it's also nice because, your university will give you options to choose from for your thesis and for your projects. But you could, if you're at a school which is quite flexible, you could be like, hey, but I have something else in mind. Discuss that with your supervisor. Just don't be afraid, because you never know what could actually work out and materialize. So yeah, do take Udo's advice seriously on that front.
Definitely. And I think both of those examples tie into something that we mentioned at the beginning, and that's potential. And even though you might not be able to demonstrate something concretely, by taking part in those internships, those case competitions, you're demonstrating your potential. Because even if you don't meet people who ultimately might lead to a career and a job, you're still taking those opportunities that show, I want to be involved, I want to learn. And the different aspects and topics that you're really immersing yourself in is so important. And most of the successful MBAs and alumni that I've spoken to in the past almost decade have really taken advantage of all the opportunities that have been offered to them in order to demonstrate their potential.
And just a one point here as well, on what Stephanie mentioned. Internships actually for MBAs is a little bit different than like undergrads interns, because those for MBAs are basically real business issues and problems that we have in the organization. So basically, when you come in, you spend like 4 to 6 weeks or 8 to 10 weeks doing an internship on a real business problem, and you solve it. Then this is definitely demonstrates your potential and as a full-time employee within the organization. So definitely I echo what Stephanie mentioned.
Awesome, thank you guys. The next question is really interesting. So as an employer especially, do you, when you get a CV and you see that someone has graduated from an MBA or business school, do you look at the name of the business school, or do you look at the skills that that person has gained throughout the study? So does an employer care about the skills and the knowledge and the topics and curriculum and all of that, or is it the name of the business school that's more important?
Look, this is a very interesting question, and I think that if I'm to reflect on my experience when I was leading some of this work for Asia, Middle East, and Africa, my previous employer. So when we look at business schools, not necessarily like the top names are the most successful for us as an organization. So each and every organization look at where actually you managed to hire successful candidates in the past and where your success rates are high, and not only in terms of like accepting our offers, but as well as accepting our offers, joining the organization, demonstrating a strong and solid track record. So this plays a role. So you would be amazed, like for example, in our previous organization, maybe like, again, Harvard was not a target school, because again, when we looked at the data and the analytics, we realized that Harvard is not like the most successful university for us to hire from for the roles that we have. So it starts as well with like this data mining that happens within the organization to identify those schools. Having said that, sometimes again, the name of the school sometimes gives you an indication of the quality of the curriculum, the quality of the education, and so on. So again, those rankings and those like continuous audits that happens to the schools do have a value, which is basically just give you an idea about the quality of the curricula that they are providing and the quality of the education. But then it's not definitely like kind of a deciding factor. You look most probably, as you mentioned, on skills and capabilities and what they are bringing to the table. And back to Udo's point, how many internships that they have done, whether they have they have been like again these extracurricular activities that they have been doing that demonstrate some soft areas rather than like kind of the technicality. Because again, back to our earlier point, is it technicality or is it leadership capability? And it is leadership capability, which we all agreed on. Then there is a value definitely for the curricula, but it is not like kind of overweighing the other aspects. If I manage to answer your question properly.
You have. Does anyone else have got an opinion? Yeah, Tika?
Yeah, just to build on Ihab's point, I mean, when you walk into, an employer's office, the fact that you are, an LBS graduate or an Oxford graduate does carry certain weightage to an extent because, it proves the fact that, you are determined, you are passionate, you are hardworking. But I think, it's important to sort of demonstrate like what you've done and how you've made a difference. Like for me, my undergraduate degree was from a school called Hofstra, which is on Long Island in New York. Most people, when you walk in, they're like, sorry, what's that? But when I tell people like I was chosen to walk Obama into the debate, that suddenly like lights up their eyes, or the fact that when I was 18 I was doing an internship at Wall Street. So I think when you are being interviewed or when you are in discussions with an employer, it's important to demonstrate what you've done and how you've done it. And it's like for me, I couldn't, when I was applying for MBAs, of course I wanted to apply to Oxford and to many other top schools, but I applied very late on in the game and I realized I don't have time to take my GMATs, and it was about going for an MBA that year or not going at all. And the options that I was left with were Bath and Durham and Southampton and schools like that. So when I met employers and they were like, oh, why Bath? I of course highlighted, when I walked into the campus, it was a good fit for me, or it was a perfect mix of modern and traditional. I think just being expressive and chatty about how, what, why makes it a lot easier for the employer to understand your journey, instead of just posting about the fact that, oh, I went to this school and you should hire me because I go to ABC school. So I think that just makes life a lot simpler, because you do of course schools do have a certain brand value, and these brand names do make a difference, but I think not in every case do they do that. I mean, of course, if on your CV it says you've had a past experience in Google, that says something about who you are and what you do, but I feel like everyone has their own specific personal journey, and as long as you're able to express that to the employer, that's enough for them, and be authentic and genuine while you do that, because they can see through you. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I agree with Ritika completely. And working with an international business school market like I do, different schools are known for different things in different markets. I mean, the US market looks at French business schools and thinks of luxury because of often what they're known for. And I think it's really down to the individual to sell themselves. And I went to this school because they're great at this, and this is what I learned, and this is why this is so good, and why you want to hire me. Because beyond what we know about INSEAD, Oxford, Cambridge, LBS, it is a lot of time you've got an MBA, that's brilliant. Now tell me what was special about that and what was special about the school. And it's down to the individual to make sure that they're putting across that branding and that reputation themselves, because often in an international market, it really is what people know about schools domestically tends to be a lot more than what they know about schools internationally.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe to still build on that point, I think one thing just to keep in mind is obviously there are some slight differences. If you pick a very local MBA, it's probably going to be more known locally, however, might not have a big name internationally. So if you're trying to get into an international position or join a global company, you'll really need to work harder to stand out there, because obviously the first have the big names in front of them. However, like the others also mentioned, this doesn't mean that there's not also a way. So it really at the end comes down to how you present yourself, how you can really show where your value lies and what you can bring to that company, and what you have done beyond the let's say the average, like where do you stand out? However, yeah, just keeping this in mind again, I think really helps, just knowing what kind of business school is actually in line with your expectations of where you want to take it later. I think the accreditation also plays an important role. Obviously, I mean, we're here at the AMBA and BGA Festival of Excellence, and there's a reason why, because these accreditations also help to understand what quality does the curriculum offer. So employers thereby have a lead of understanding what do they get at the end, what do these candidates bring to the table in terms of technical skills. But of course, what's really, really important at the end of the day is also those people skills, the leadership potential, and how you can really show how you stand up. So I also like Ritika's point with there might be some candidates and they have worked at Google or whatever. This doesn't necessarily tell you that it's going to be a perfect match for a position. So it's really about really looking beyond that and showing what have you actually done, how have you done it, how have you really shown extraordinary engagement, and thereby really being able to convince your future employer of your product.
And I agree with you guys. I think it's sometimes it is hard. I mean, to Ahab's point earlier, as someone whose brother studied at Harvard University and MIT, and I know that when he was looking for jobs in Wall Street, that was not a problem. But we have had some candidates as well that have completed studies in those well-known universities, but they were not really the right match. And to me, personally, it comes down to what they learned, what they studied, which is why it's so important nowadays that business schools also build a bridge together with industry, because it's not, we don't ask you to know the technology, but have the understanding of how the business is changing so that you can build all that business acumen. It's really, really important. And especially as part of a company that's pioneering in a particular technology, it's really important for us that you understand what that is. So for me, it would be first knowledge, it will be the skills, the ability to be elastic, the ability to manage change as good as you can. I think the last year in particular taught us all about how to adapt, how to handle the difficulties. And I'm pretty sure that we've learned a lot from it. And that is really what an employer wants. But an extra great name that comes along with it, I think, I wouldn't say that's a must, but it's nice to have, really. For me, it's really all the skills. How much network have you built? What have you done? Has it always been study, or have you done something else? Because, you know, learning happens everywhere. So it's not just what you learn in school, but like half marathons that Ritika was talking about, or learning extra languages, or traveling abroad, or spending a year just, I don't know, learning, teaching, mentoring, all of that counts, really. So on that note, when an MBA student joins a company, is there a particular expectation that the employers have set that they want an MBA student to basically meet, right? Have you had that situation where there's an MBA student, he's joining and he will be doing X, Y, Z, and the list is long? Has that happened to any one of you? I have.
Well, actually, what I would say is that when we are focused on hiring MBAs, whether in my current organization or my previous organization, we usually bring them in programs. So the programs, for example, one of them is called International Recruitment Development Program, which is basically a rotations program. So because of the broad again business knowledge that MBAs normally acquire, so what happens is you bring them to do a specific rotation for 6 to 9 months, and then they complete this, and then they move into a different rotation. And then whether they are then placed into like a full-time role, or they do a third rotation based on like kind of again the functions that they are placed in. But you try as much as you can to leverage the expertise and the experience that they got in multiple rotations. And this actually not only helps leveraging their knowledge and expertise, but as well as placing them at more of a senior management role after they complete those rotations. So basically, it's not a matter of expectations, but let me put it as like the programs, there is a structured programs where you can bring those talents in, and make sure that they are getting the most out of this experience, as well as the organization is getting the most out of their knowledge that they have acquired during the MBA program.
Okay, so at your company, you pretty much know that an MBA on a CV doesn't mean you got a ready product. So you're shaping them as you go. And how long is the program? How long does it go for?
So some of them has 2 rotations, some have 3 rotations. Normally a rotation is 6 to 9 months. So so you would say that like anything between 18 to 24 months is the length of the program.
Oh, nice. Udo, you had your line unmuted.
Yeah, sure. I can also add some of my recent experience. So obviously, when you join a new company for the MBA program, you also think about, okay, what is my employer going to expect from me? And I think it's very true. They don't think that you come as a finished package and they throw a super huge assignment at you and say, okay, here you go and solve all our problems at once. I think that's obviously for both sides not exactly the expectation. I think it really depends. Obviously, the MBA programs differentiate from company to company. So some of them have a different scope, but at the end, I mean, the idea is that you really develop future leaders. So this means that when you come, I think that the only real expectation is that you go there with a growth mindset, and you don't see it as, okay, I've done my MBA, now I get the well-paid job and I'm done. It's about really like, now let's take it a level further, and you want to develop into becoming exactly that, like a future leader. And so this means like, really showing that from your side and going into these assignments really with such a kind of mindset, showing what you've learned, using your toolbox from the MBA, obviously. And there's, I mean, a lot where you can bring value. Obviously, nowadays, I think there's a lot, for example, like digital skills, etc. All the companies right now are really like scrambling and trying to make this shift happen in regards to digital transformation. But of course, there's also other very important roles and projects where you can bring value to the table. And then again, there's this rotation. So you get the chance to really also learn on the job, to develop. And I think the expectation from both sides is that you have this self-awareness of knowing whether you want to take it, what is a good kind of line of work for you, where you want to develop to in the long term. So this is also not the same for everyone. I think there are different possibilities. You can go more in a marketing direction, you can go more in a sales direction, you can go more into a direction of, for example, general management with a very long-term view. So and kind of figuring this out together in the process and being there, that's kind of the path, I guess. But the most important is having the right mindset and being really willing to learn and grow.
Ritika?
Yes, just to build on to Udo's point, I would also say, communication is very key here. I remember when I went in for my interviews post MBA, I would make sure that, in each interview, I also asked the employer as many questions as I had, because I think this communication really helps manage those expectations. As much as, the employer wants to know if you're worth it, it's also important for you to know what's out there and what's on the table, because your first job post the MBA, can really make a difference in your career overall. And, even if you do decide to go in with that offer and take on the job, when you do have your midsummer and your evaluations with, your line manager or the team, I think a feedback should be two-way. As much as, you're, responsible and accountable for what they're giving you, it's also important for you to put out there what your expectations are and what you're thinking of, because, that just makes the whole experience a whole lot more rewarding and, positive. At least for me, I remember when I had my first internship, I used to be, very nervous to ask my manager, what expectations I had. I just thought, I'm 18 now, I have this job on Wall Street, like I'm just going to do what they asked me to do. And, later on in my career, when I, established a good relationship with my mentor, I realized actually it's not that hard to ask for what you're thinking, and maybe from my body language or from my wording, it sort of just happened to get conveyed to my manager, but that's not always the case. So I would say step out for coffee, do have a personal Zoom meeting with your line manager and discuss those expectations, because your time's very valuable as well. You are there to make a difference in the organization, but it's also important to grow both personally and professionally. and those expectations are what makes a difference to that. So just be open, be communicative, don't sit down and be shy or be nervous, because it's a tough world out there and you're also devoting your time to a certain organization. So it's important for you to get benefit out of that. So yeah, that would be my advice to fellow graduates and students who are attending today.
Absolutely. And maybe still one thing to add, I think what can really help you is you have to see it that way. You're the captain of your career. So proactivity, I think, is really key as well. Because at the end of the day, if you always just wait for the next thing being handed to you, the development might not go as you would expect. I think you have to really also take control a little bit and communicate constantly what you're aiming to achieve, and finding opportunities together. So obviously, having a mentor, being in close touch and discussing expectations is super important. In my case, that was really very helpful, because a few months after I joined, I was always trying to already have this long-term view and say what could be a next possible assignment, what could be a next project once this one is over to work on. So by chance, it happened actually that after a few months, we decided I'm going to take a role as interim COO for the German organization, which was really fantastic because I could learn so much in that time frame. And this only happened because I kept asking and pushing. So I think this is something to really also take away, and really just always, communicate the expectations, see where you can take it, and go for growth opportunities.
Oh, well done. Well done. The next question is really interesting. Do HR teams know what they want for MBA specific leadership roles, or are they using a tick box exercise for all the roles? Come on,
Come again.
Tell us your secrets. Do HR teams know what they want for MBA specific leadership roles, or are they using a tick box exercise for all roles?
No, and that's why actually it is in the way in multinationals or like big organizations, when you have structured programs for different cohort groups, you will find that there is specific way for evaluation and assessment for all those different groups based on what we are expecting and what we are trying to attract and hire. So you would find that there are different types of interviews, assessments that are being leveraged and utilized based on the seniority of the roles that we are hiring and based on the types of the profiles that we are trying to attract. So no, one size does not fit all, and absolutely this is not the approach, at least in the organization that I had experience with, or at least that I would know that you guys will be targeting and looking for. So so this is joint collaboration, and even sometimes it goes beyond that. So it goes to the job, but sometimes it goes even towards the team that you're hiring for, and then you had these conversations with the hiring manager and say that, look, now we have an opportunity to bring an MBA into the organization. So what are the types of capabilities that you are missing within your team? So what is this missing puzzle piece that you would like to integrate that can actually push the whole team forward? So sometimes even you have the same kind of assessment that are evaluating people, but when you look at the results, you are focusing on certain areas because of team dynamics or organizational dynamics in a certain area. So so we take a very personalized approach, if you will, when it comes to all our hiring, and let alone if we are hiring definitely MBA in specific program, because there are lots of investments that are put behind those programs. So for example, the RDP program, it is a program where the new joiners come, they have lots of benefits, like monetary benefits, if you will. But in addition to that, and more importantly, is that they get a full year of mentorship and coaching during the first year of hiring, just to integrate them within the organization, making sure that they understand their strengths, their opportunities, working on developmental plans for them. And all those investments actually require us to be very conscious. How are we hiring them? How are we looking at the right skills and attitudes and capabilities before bringing them on board?
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
It absolutely did. I hope it did for everyone else. Now, future of business, 5, 10, 20 years from now, are you feeling optimistic? Udo? I'm just going to pick.
I mean, this is the $1 million question. I think it really depends. I mean, obviously, we're going to see a lot of shifts. I expect, I mean, as you just saw now, this can happen super fast. And now with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've already seen how entire industries are suddenly scrambling and there were some devastating effects. On the other hand, new opportunities have unfolded. And I mean, we are all now here on Zoom. Nobody knew Zoom a year ago. So I think it's really key to position yourself for the future. And I think there's always going to be business. The question is just where and what's that business going to be about. I mean, obviously, we know that a couple of years down the line, everything digital will play an even bigger role. We're now heading into the age of artificial intelligence. We're working on quantum computers, etc. So there's so much going on out there. So it always helps, of course, having an eye on these trends. But on the other hand, there are also things that I guess will never change and that will always be required and will always be a solid business. So I think it's just important to kind of, you know, have an overview of what's going on and being aware of that and positioning yourself well.
And I'd agree with that. And I'm definitely optimistic about business in the next 5, 10, 15 years. History's shown, you know, once there's a downturn, there is a boom, there is good business. I don't think it's going to look the same as it has done. I think many businesses have learned a lot in the past year, from big topics like sustainability to equality. I think these topics we're going to see more and more. So it's not going to look the same as the past few decades. I am optimistic for business in the next 5, 10, 15 years, definitely.
I love, Stephanie, what you just said, especially topics like diversity as well, with leadership, equality, age equality, and all of that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Praise you for that, for mentioning it really, really well. Ritika?
Yes, I agree with Udo and Stephanie. I'm also quite optimistic about, you know, businesses, whether it's in 5 years, 10 years, or, you know, even 3 decades from now. But, you know, one thing I'd like to build on is there might be many participants who are attending today who are not actually looking for a job, but working on their business ideas. And, you know, if you do feel there's a certain problem area or, you know, a trend in the market that you could capitalize on, you know, make sure while you're at school, you make the most of that opportunity. I remember when I was at Bath, we had something called Set Squared, where you could actually prototype a business idea or take it to the next level or pitch it to, you know, a sample venture capitalists who could come in. And so, you know, you only get these opportunities while you're at university. And I know, you know, it can get really overwhelming with coursework and exams and thesis and, you know, many other engagements and expectations. But this time is very limited. And what you make of it while you're there is really up to you. Nobody's going to come and, you know, spoon feed you like you do in your undergraduate career or like in high school. It's for you to get up. And, you know, I used to just like walk into like random professor offices during office hour and be like, you know, I'm working on this. Would you have 5 minutes to get a coffee? Can I please pitch it to you like you are, you know, my audience? And, you know, that really helped me establish those relationships. And, you know, there was an actual idea that we came up with in the field of green finance with 2 other colleagues of mine. You know, it didn't materialize because we all ended up choosing different paths post-MBA. But did I learn from it? Yes, a lot. And, you know, those opportunities you only get when you're at MBA school, and you're only probably going to do an MBA once. So make sure you make the most of it and take advantage of these trends and these, you know, advantages that come with business school, because it's only going to last a limited time. Once you become an alumni, like it's not going to be the same. You know, you're not going to actually be on a campus and have, you know, the chance of, you know, walking into the director of studies office who probably has, you know, 30 years of experience in a field that you plan to have your career in. And especially for those of you know who are looking to change careers, many of you choose to do an MBA because you're currently in the field of arts, but you want to, you know, pursue like finance or economics. So, you know, meet people, talk to people. Also, you know, LinkedIn is such a great platform. I keep emphasizing everywhere I go. And a lot of people think, you know, they have a basic profile, they use it limitedly. But for me, like a lot of connections that I actually established were through LinkedIn. You know, I reached out to random alumni that would pop in or I spotted, and many of them were actually willing to help out and give back. And that was a great way to get in touch. So, you know, don't underestimate the power of, you know, social networking in that sense, because it can actually just a small message on LinkedIn could actually emerge into, you know, your next possible job. So get out there, use your extra time to reach out to people, talk to people. There's nothing to lose. You're only going to learn. So
That leads us really, really well into the next question, which is we're talking about businesses are changing and we're talking about transformation, et cetera, et cetera. How can students keep up with all of those famous trends? So where should they go? What should they follow? What should they attend to be able to be always, current with the trends in the market and business?
I'll start actually with, if I may, with what Udo mentioned, is basically where you would like to be, because you will never be able to be on top of each and every single trend that is happening there. So first of all, focus, identify where you would like to be, and then based on that, you will be able to know where to go, what to read, what are the different forums that I will need to be around, who are the people that I will need to be following and looking at their news, because they're the thought leaders in this space. And once you have done that, you will be on top of the trends. If I may just expand on the previous question as well, opportunities will always be there for those who are willing to take it. So the idea is, whether I'm optimistic or pessimistic, it really depends on the persons who are approaching the world. And I saw a few of the questions that they are out there, talking about people who would like to change jobs, or age biases that they are in the market, and we will be addressing those. But the idea is that there will always be the opportunities. It will require some flexibility and agility, and maybe taking a step back to move forward. So those are all things that people can do. But on this specific aspect of keeping up with the trends, identify where you will need to be, and then you will find the relevant forums for that. And Steph, I think that you had an expansion on that.
Yes, I agree completely. And I think you're right, talking about capitalizing on the trends that speak to you rather than just a sort of across the board approach. And I find things like making sure that I'm following the right people on Twitter, or that my LinkedIn network's really up to scratch and I'm staying up to date and looking at what's going on. I agree with Ritika in that shouldn't be underestimated. And I think there are key outlets that cover certain topics, from Financial Times to The Economist, and being able to be in touch with up-to-date information like that is really valuable for MBA students to capitalize on, to know what's going on from trusted sources.
How about Harvard Business Review, Smart Brave? Are you guys following any of those? Subscribe to them? Google.
I think with COVID, so many other online courses and stuff emerged along the way. So if I would take advantage of those, because step into something that you don't know about. I remember when I was in Bath, somebody told me, why don't you sign up for this business analytics course? And I was like, I'm definitely going to fail this class. Like, I know nothing about it. This profession I've heard about. And somebody was like, but isn't the MBA about stepping out of your comfort zone and actually learning something that you don't already know? And I was almost tempted to take a course that I knew I would get a straight A in, but then I was like, I didn't just pay so much. I didn't just give up my career to come relearn something I already know about, and I actually myself and took that course, and I can't actually tell you how much it helped me when I was at the case competition. When I got back into my job, I actually realized, wow, this is some really useful stuff, So don't be afraid. I mean, I just keep re-emphasizing the fact that an MBA is not about grades. Nobody's ever going to ask you if you graduated with a distinction. Like, it's been over 2 years since I graduated. Nobody's really seen my degree or asked me that. And I didn't actually get a distinction, but the fact that, I had so many opportunities outside of the classroom, all these competitions, all these people I networked with, I would say, this is the real learning. It's not so much, that A, of course, it's a great feeling to, top your class or graduate in the top 5 percentile. Why not? If you can do it, go for it by all means, but don't that your criteria, because that's not what's going to land you your first job, or that's not what's going to help you stand out when you get out in the job market. And I'm sure
since we're just here for thanks to Amber, brought us all together. I think it's also really important that you're looking at these trends from accrediting bodies and certain industry experts. Things like Amber's Ambition magazine, they always have up-to-date information, insights that can be really, really helpful for MBA students to understand better about certain trends and what they can use themselves in their job search, in their future careers. Really, really good.
Yeah, and maybe still to just add my 2 cents, I think, because the question originally you asked were like, how can you actually keep up with all of it? I think one important point that was also mentioned, I think by Ehab, is like, you do not have to be the expert for everything. However, what can really help is just to get some exposure to some of these trends. And that's why like it's so important to follow up with, for example, what Stephanie just mentioned, the AMBA magazine, with other sources, the Harvard Business Review, the networks. At the end of the day, for example, also the electives can already be helpful to position you in a way. And I took electives in blockchain or in artificial intelligence. However, this doesn't mean that I'm now planning to become a blockchain expert or whatever. And I don't need to be a blockchain expert, but I need to maybe have some basic understanding of what could be the potential impact on my industry in the future, and being able then to navigate change. I think this is really key, that you kind of try to get enough exposure to understand how can certain technologies or developments help you navigate change and take it in the right direction. And then obviously also always thinking of hiring key people that can then really bring in the depth and the expertise to really develop those things. I think that's certainly also important.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I know we have a few more minutes before we can take a look at the Q&A. So some of you, if not all of you, participated in judging various awards this year. So don't give anything away. But when you were making your decisions anonymously, what were you looking for? What was it that you were? What were you basing your decisions on?
I think I'll kick off with this one, because I think this is the 4th year I've judged the AMBA Awards, and I must say this year the standard was so high. And I think for me, what I look for more than anything else is going over and above. So it might be an opportunity that the business school provided for you, but how did you make it more than that? Like, what did you do that went out of your comfort zone, that really took it to the next level? It wasn't doing something well, it was doing something that you didn't have to do, and it turned out incredibly.
Oh, wow. Nice. Ritika?
Yeah, to build on to Stephanie's point, of course, going over and beyond is extremely important. What did you do differently, and how did you maximize your time at business school? But I think, when I looked at nominations this year and also last year, one thing I always look for is who's keeping it real. That there might be one nomination that you receive, and that person could have mentioned 25 things that they did, but you almost know that they're bullshitting their way through it. Like, there could be one person who worked on a very small project, but I think when you read the nominations, you see the passion that's there through it. And for me, that's what I look for. The authenticity of the person is what makes that person stand out for me. And, it's a very confusing decision. And, as Stephanie said, the standard and the quality keeps going higher and higher every year. And this year it was like, wow, this person's done a lot. And, they're only 29 or 30, but the amount of things that they've accomplished have actually made a real difference. But I think, authenticity and the passion and keeping it real is what makes a specific student stand out for me when I look at nominations. So yeah, keep it real, guys.
Udo, I have.
Okay, I'll jump in. So yeah, I mean, I must add, it was really difficult to make this decision. Like, the candidates were outstanding and amazing profiles, amazing stories for sure. I think ultimately for me, what was really important was leadership potential. So apart from these other things, I think where you could find really that all of them were on a very high level, I really then tried to narrow it down to future leadership potential. And I mean, not only on a personal level, actually even on a societal level, because I think nowadays it's more and more important that we think holistically, and we can see that there's no detachment between business and between the environment and society. And so I was really trying to see with this holistic sense, like, who brings the most to the table, and has really also shown beyond the MBA program to have this potential.
Well, actually, for me, it was my first year, so like a little bit new to judging, and wow, it just like, as everyone mentioned, just like amazing profiles, lots of great potential. I looked at everything that the panelists mentioned, and in addition to that, is just like the impact that they produce in all the different projects that they have done, and again, how this impact goes beyond their own group and their own university and MBA. But again, back to this point, it's just like covering a broad range of like, again, communities and societies. So yes, it has been really challenging, but the amount of great work, passion, and capability that I saw in this day was amazing.
Thank you. I can't agree more. So I guess, David, we are good to start with Q&A.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, so Nyakomi, you ask, what is the impact of coming from a self-employed, a business that's still running as well, but would not distract from full-time employment as its management has been delegated, background in one's search for employment? So pretty much, what is the impact of coming from self-employment background in one's search for employment? Anyone in particular would like to answer that question? Yep.
Well, I can say that it's really dependent on the type of job and what are you bringing to the table. So I think that there is lots of great stuff that you can build in a self-employment that you cannot really build in a corporate world, because again, in a corporate world, it's really like kind of things are structured. You are just you are adding to a whole system, versus being self-employed, where you are having this entrepreneurial skills and so on. So it really depends on the job, but I don't see that it's so this experience gets discounted, or like is not looked at as seriously as experiences in corporate. And I think Ritika mentioned this earlier, working in a family business and then moving into corporate, and how sometimes there's a bias in that. But I personally speaking, and in the organization that I work for, I see that there is a value that those candidates can bring to the table that normally people who used to do or used to work their full career in corporate cannot really bring.
Ritika?
I would like to build on Ihab's point. I actually completely agree with that. He's of course talking from an employer standpoint, and I'm talking from a recent graduate standpoint. But I do believe that being self-employed comes with the fact that you're super flexible, you're super adaptable, and you're really hardworking. Because being self-employed may sound easy to some, but it's actually not. Being employed, as he said, comes with a lot of structure. It comes with a designated set of tasks. It comes with a designated set of responsibilities. But being self-employed is actually a lot harder than it looks, because it comes along with a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. And the fact that you've been able to manage that proves the fact that you can work under high pressure situations. So I would just say that, when you are meeting somebody from HR or when you are being interviewed, make sure you express that, because, that's very important to the employer. And also mention, why you're looking to move away from that path, why you're looking for that specific role, because, bridging that gap is for you to do, not for the employer to find out. So I've seen a lot of smart candidates who actually come in for interviews, but they keep their answers really short and brief. But I would say be detailed. Why not? If you have an example to support that, or if you've had something that you're happy to share, even in the personal space, that's making you move towards that role or that job, then just be expressive about it, because the employer wants to know you. They want to learn about there's many CVs that they look at day in and day out, but they don't actually meet that many people in person. And if you can express that and explain to them your journey, it's only going to make it easier for you to get your foot into that door. So don't be afraid to mention what challenges or what's happened in your specific case, whatever that may be, because it's only going to help the employer make their decision when they are deciding whether to hire you or not to hire you. A lot of people just get afraid and think the employer might judge me, or this is something really personal, I don't want to share it with the employer. But I think the employer, does understand where you come from. So please, you are able to demonstrate and express that, whether it's through, written communication or an in-person meeting or, a Zoom meeting, really.
That's a good point. There was I don't see the name of the person who asked the question, but the question is quite interesting. So what about MBA for progressing in your current job? Do you have any advice for pitching yourself for your current employer for a high role or large salary as an example? Anyone?
I mean, maybe I'll start. Okay, or Ehab, you take it away and then
No.
Go for it.
No, please go ahead.
I mean, basically, especially bigger companies, as they have these corporate MBA programs, they obviously also always have talent programs internally to identify talents within the organization. So I think it's something we already mentioned earlier, that it's super important to kind of regularly discuss with your mentors about opportunities. Once you decide to embark on an MBA journey, try to kind of talk about your expectations and say, let's find a way together. How can we kind of place yourself on that journey that you might be considered for either the corporate MBA program or for some other kind of talent program where you can really then leverage that degree. I think this is super crucial, but I know that this is also quite common, that this is being considered as long as you really discuss these expectations and make sure that there's alignment.
I hope. Thank you, though.
100%. So I was just going to say the same. So before embarking the journey, just make sure that any education that you are taking to further progress your career, that this is there is an alignment on that it is job relevant or like it's a role relevant. So if for example an R&D scientist or scientist mentioned that I would like to go for an MBA, there would be a little bit of like reluctance that the organization is supporting them. But if someone who's in a strategy, for example, department, the conversation would be a little bit different. So the idea of like make sure that it is aligned, that it is even if it is not sponsored and provided by the organization, and you would like to continue pursue it, just highlight that I would like to do this, and I would like to understand whether this in line with like our career conversations or not, and if yes, how this can help me grow further and build this alignment and make sure that. And it's not the credential. It's not like the three letters next to your name. It is basically what you are demonstrating after having this journey of taking an MBA is what will progress you in the organization. So make sure while you are embarking this learning journey is that you are taking those learning, bringing this value to the organization, and without you pitching it, your work should be pitching it honestly. So this is my recommendation for you.
And I want to say last year I actually looked at a business school that is AMBA accredited for executive MBA. And I almost went for it had it not been for obviously everything that's going on, but I'm definitely planning on doing it, not because I personally want a much more senior role or a higher salary, but it was some of the points that Ritika said earlier. It's about learning something that I'm in particular in, but it's not something that I already know. So just expanding that knowledge and that network really at the level that I would like to be. But no, that's really, really good. Thank you, guys. Sorry, Stefan, did you want to add something?
Just going to expand on points just made and say that I think it's so important to help your employer understand your motivations for doing it. But I actually agree that also it should be something that they support. And often it's a give or take. It's like, well, I want to do an MBA for these reasons, and this will bring all these skills to the company. And sometimes that might mean you have to sign a contract that say, I'll stay with you for 5 years, and otherwise I pay you back for financing the program. There are definitely ways, and I think it's that communication and helping that understanding of why you want to do it, what it will bring, and what that means for the company. Because ultimately, that if they don't know what an MBA is about really in depth in terms of the content, then that's down to the person to help them understand.
No, I agree. Vinay asks, do you think recruiters are looking at EQ EQ along with IQ in candidates nowadays. What are the things recruiters are looking for in a CV for EQ? Yeah, there are a lot of questions about recruitment.
Yes. No, absolutely. Would love to take them all. Look, it's very difficult for you to evaluate emotional intelligence on a resume. So basically, so the first question: do we look at emotional intelligence? Yes, we do, but we look at it as, so. For example, in my current organization, we look at what we call it leadership imperatives, which are under 3 different buckets, which are like, how are you shaping a culture, how you are growing yourself and your talents, and how you are connecting with internal and external stakeholders. So shape, connect, and grow. And emotional intelligence, you can correlate it into those different elements. So we evaluate that in the interviews, we evaluate it in the assessments as well. Can you demonstrate this on a CV? I think the idea is, on a CV, my recommendation always to candidates when they ask me how to revisit the resume is, when you are highlighting things under your different job titles, highlight your key achievements and what impact that you have done versus those bullet points which are taken from a job description, because again, this will demonstrate the value, and this will help actually in some shape or form understand, if you join the organization, what impact that you can really bring. So again, this is how I would say it. So think of those, like, again, managing teams, collaborating internally and externally in order to achieve a common objective. How can you translate those capabilities or behaviors into the examples that you are sharing as key achievements within the different roles that you've played? I know that you guys are always limited to this 1-page kind of resume, which is, if it became like a page and a half, it's not the end of the world. But again, sometimes you will need to show this, especially for experienced folks, like some of you who have like 7-10 years of experience. Again, going above this like 1-pager is always fine. So hope this answered your question.
Indeed. Another one. Hi everyone, thank you for your time. I want to change my career path from corporate finance to investment management. Do you have any interview tips for career changers?
I would just like to say straight up that this is something that a lot of people use an MBA for, to make that switch from one career path to a different one, and it's a great way to do that. And I think ultimately it's about making any employers or any potential employers understand why you did that and how you've done that through the MBA specifically.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sorry, Udo.
Sorry, you were first.
All right. Yeah, I think Stephanie's completely right there. And I think a lot of people hesitate and try to hide the fact because they think change is not good. But employers actually don't think that change is good and change is important. If you've been in a career for the last 10 years and you've not enjoyed it or don't like it or don't think you're passionate about it, well, now's the time to that move. And I think when a lot of people come for the MBA, at least in my class at Bath, most people I would talk to, they wanted to do something completely different, just to be afraid, especially coming from certain cultures, people hesitate and they think it's not going to be respected and appreciated. But when you look at stats, the biggest reason for people coming in for an MBA is the fact that, they want to change or have a shift. So when you speak to an employer or when you network with people, be open and honest about it, talk about why you want that change or what you would do differently or why you want to get into investment management in your case, just start doing that very early on in your MBA, because then that's where you network, that's who you talk to, that's who you get connected with. Also, I would say when you work on specific projects or when you have panelists and speaker sessions and stuff, speak to them about it. Some of them may have experienced something very similar to you, and they might have some really good advice to share that could actually save you a lot of time. Just be honest and open about it. If I would have a LinkedIn, I would even say looking for a change in career, wanting to get into investment management, because this just helps you pop up in places that you may not otherwise. So use this tip, and I'm sure it'll help you when you are looking for jobs and such.
Yeah, absolutely agree with Ritika, and maybe still can add a little bit as well. So it's definitely key to kind of keep reaching out, growing your network, and use all the opportunities. So obviously, besides from classes and electives you can take that can help you even focus more on that direction, there's also a lot happening outside of the classroom. So make sure that you attend career fairs, make sure that you attend conferences, seminars, anything related to that field. You can leverage, for example, some of the business schools have clubs. So maybe you join a club that's focused on investment management. Maybe you can, do some projects even on the side, and you have something to present then in the interview. Maybe there's an opportunity for an internship that you can organize. So it's really about also being able to show that you're really taking steps towards that career. And then obviously, if you add some persistence, and you really know that you want to do this, then it might take a little while to make this shift really happen. But if you keep pushing in that direction, it will happen eventually. So I think it's all about really taking the right steps and reaching out and leveraging any opportunity you can that brings you closer.
And I think this really
no, I just wanted to add on that, especially with career shifts, there are some sacrifices that you will need to be conscious of and willing to make as well. Because I remember, for example, I did a career shift after completing my undergrad degree. So I completed my undergrad in pharmacy and then I moved to HR. But for me to do that, I had to work with a small training and consulting business that can give me like this initial, experience within the field, and then I can grow my career from there. So again, being conscious that you guys are MBA grads or MBA students who come already with experience, so you would have some level of expectations when it comes to, like, again, the career level, the pay level that you're getting after investing in an MBA. So changing career will come with, like, again, it could come with some tough decisions that you will need to make. But if this is for the sake of the longer term career path, and this is really where you would like to be, and this is where you're seeing yourself, I think it could be worth it. But you will need to be conscious of that and willing to do that as well, because then you will move into this field, you will need to deliver, and you will need to demonstrate potential in order to be able to grow there. And you will not be able to do that if you're not engaged, or you don't feel that you are in the right place.
And I think the last, everything you guys have said also answers question from Nicole Pinto, which is, what advice would you give to someone who is looking at a career shift after an MBA? And similar to you, Ehab, for example, someone with a clinical medical background looking at moving towards industry, right? So that's really good. Next question. What are the benefits and drawbacks of starting MBA program immediately after graduation? Go, Ritika.
Yeah, I think it definitely comes with a set of advantages and disadvantages. I think the advantage, I always like to start with the positive. So I would say the advantage is that you are really in the flow of getting work done and doing coursework. For me, I went in for an MBA almost 5 years after my undergraduate, and I almost forgot, how to write a paper, how to sit there, in a lecture hall, listening to somebody for 5 hours, because you get so used to, the real world and the workplace that you forget how to be in an academic setting. I had to like relearn how to, do citations, how to do references, because in MBAs, they take these things quite seriously. On the other hand, I think the disadvantage is the fact that you don't actually have that much experience. So in a way, I felt like, people who did come in with no experience were almost wasting their time, because you haven't been in the real world and you haven't had practical application of what you've learned in your undergraduate degree. You're sitting there redoing the same thing. So I would recommend people, to come with some experience, even if that is 2 to 3 years, unless, you studied something completely different in your undergrad and you want to get into, business or something that makes sense. I think, again, it's a little hard to answer this question because it's very specific to your journey and your goals. And it really depends on where you are and where you're trying to go. But overall, I think, you also feel a little bit behind other people when you come in with no experience. I was one of the youngest ones in my classroom, and I was 28 when I was doing my MBA. There was people there from Japan who had more experience than my entire age, really. So when I sat there, I just felt like, am I going to be, behind these people? But again, don't underestimate yourself because of your age or your experience, because what you bring to the table could actually be really unique. You could have had 3 years of experience versus somebody who has 30 years of experience, but the kind of exposure or opportunity you had can really set you apart. So I would just say, when you do things like group projects and teamwork and stuff, it's important to understand what you're good at and capitalize on, what your team members are good at. And we took a lot of time figuring this out. We would just be like, okay, this is your responsibility. And then later on in the program, I was like, oh my God, this person's so analytical. Why would I, give them work like that? And then, it was pretty much too late. I learned that very late on in the program. So I think, if you spend a lot of time with each other initially and you identify who's good at what, your, end product will actually be really good and positive. And I can, assure you of that. And, somebody from, an Asian country who's actually really good at something, but not very good at presenting or expressing, but just really sharp at, putting an idea together. I remember there was somebody called Sun Chi, who I had a lot of group work with. He came from Shanghai, and that guy was a genius at just animation. And, the way, like, I had the idea, but the way he would like put it together would just, blow somebody away in the audience. And, I just kept thinking, he's so good at this. Of course, he wanted to learn more, and he wanted to, step in other spaces and, develop in areas that he felt like were areas of development. But I would just say, when you're with your team members and, with your colleagues on the MBA, capitalize on each other's strengths instead of sitting there and fighting and arguing about, what's not working. Try to realize and pinpoint who's good at what. Because, if there's 5 of you on a project, there could be somebody who's really analytical. There could be somebody who's just really creative. There could be somebody who just has zero knowledge of the industry or, coursework, but they might be really, really good at, just putting everything together. So if you end up doing that, I just think it can save you a lot of time and effort and a whole lot of fight.
Yeah, leverage each other's strengths and learn from them.
Definitely.
I'm going to make this the last recruitment question I have, but it's a very interesting one. Does age count through? So I think parts of the question is missing. So I'm assuming this is, does age count through the recruitment process? Or maybe,
So if I understood the question well, is basically if we're talking about age as a hinder
in correlation to MBA as well, yes.
Yes, definitely. So and if we're looking at age as a hinder for selection, for example, no, definitely not. So I think we should be far past this era where, like, those age biases are taking part in a selection process. So age doesn't really count. So what we're looking at is basically what can you bring into the table. And actually, funny enough, I had recently studied about, like, age discrimination and how like different age groups can bring value. And in an insurance company, actually, I think this was in the UK, where they hired seniors in their call center, and again, this is definitely not MBA, but just like to make a point. And the level of customer satisfaction that they got actually from that is significantly higher than the the fresh grads or the normal profiles that you hire in a call center. And the reason why is just like the compassion that they have and the understanding of the challenges of what are the people are facing. So no, actually, age is not playing a role. It is all about your capability. What can you bring to the table? And sometimes experiences of like, again, the experiences that you can bring, the life experience that you can bring are invaluable and can really help driving business forward. So this is my answer here.
Thank you. I think we kind of partially answered this one. What are the next steps after graduating from an MBA program? It is important for me to expand myself, not just the salary, but my knowledge too. Due to COVID-19, is that possible? For example, to move to an international company, etc. We have at least someone respond to this.
So the one thing that I'm currently seeing is that there is definitely a shift in the working arrangements generally, and this was very obvious because last year everyone was working remotely. So organizations now are revisiting like location bound versus location free roles, and whether do I really need this role to be done from this specific location or not, because like the outcomes of that is you are having a much larger talent pool that is sitting globally that can be doing this role versus limiting yourself to the people who are in one city or in one country. So there is definitely a shift there. The idea is again, you will need to demonstrate this as well. If we're talking about people who are moving internationally, you need to demonstrate that you're flexible, you are willing actually to move between countries, that you would like to relocate, and you don't have an issue with that. And more importantly, you will need to show this, like, again, diversity of thinking, diversity of culture, how you engage and include people from different, again, backgrounds and experiences. Because I think this is one of the maybe sometimes is the question marks, is that will they be able to integrate with the new culture if they moved internationally or not. And I think being in an MBA in schools where you have a significant international collaboration and different people who are coming from countries, I think that you are in a great position to demonstrate that you have this, cross-cultural collaboration and understanding through the projects that you guys have been working on. So the short answer is yes, definitely international moves are there. And there is, like, even the one step forward, you can get an international role from the comfort of your home city.
Thank you. A question from Hillary: is there a competitive advantage of full-time on-site MBA programs versus or over online MBA programs taken by students already working at managerial levels? And if so, what might these be? Yeah, Ritika?
Happy to take that. I think once again, it comes with a set of advantages and disadvantages, like everything else does in life. The advantage is that what you're actually learning and pursuing on the MBA, you're instantly able to apply that when you go back in the workplace, while you're working. I saw that because we used to have a lot of combined classes with executive MBA students who were in managerial roles. And, I think the disadvantage is that you're connected from what's happening on campus. You're constantly trying to juggle between your responsibility at work and the MBA. For me personally, if given a choice, I would just take a year out and go pursue a full-time MBA to, fully engage myself, to make the most of, being on campus, because there's a lot of other opportunities that, come with being on campus. There's only so much that you can learn remotely. And I think especially with the MBA, because there's so many collaborative exercises and teamwork and stuff, I think being together in person does actually add a lot of value, which a lot of people do underestimate. But for me, I mean, if I did the MBA that I did online, I think I wouldn't have actually gotten out of it what I did. So, for those of you who do have the chance and opportunity, do get out there and take some time out and go in for a full-time course. But I know for many of you, it's not an option because of, the roles that you're in, or, the circumstance that you may be in. So that's what I had to share on that front.
Thank you.
I'd like to add that
from
an industry perspective, that there are very many different online MBAs and MBA programs in person studied on campus. The thing I think with an online MBA is ultimately, what do you want from it? If it's the content, brilliant, and you're able to learn in a self-paced way, fantastic. If you're looking to network, make great connections, then perhaps an on-campus one is better for you. But ultimately, excellent online MBAs also provide those facilities. They provide environments online and structures in which people can work together and communicate and network. So ultimately, if you're interested in one or the other, look into both and understand what a certain institution offers and how that meets your goal.
Thank you, Stephanie. Well, it's 12:29 here in UK, and time has flown really, really quickly. And there are so many other questions that I wish we could answer now, but I'm hoping that David will be able to somehow circulate them to us. I want to thank every single one of you. I very much enjoyed it, and I'm probably going to now rethink this whole EMBA and continue it or whatever, but I really, really enjoyed meeting every single one of you. And also everyone who has asked the questions, thank you so very much. And having said all of that, David, I'm going to pass now ball to you and allow you to close the session.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you to all of the panelists. I thought that was fascinating, and 90 minutes flew past, didn't it? Maybe not for you guys, but certainly for me. So yeah, as Anna mentioned, there's loads of questions left over, but don't worry, we have them all saved. So what I'll try and do is I will either share them with some of the panelists. I can see that Ritika, you've mentioned that you're happy to answer some, and I'm sure all the other panelists would be really keen to help out as well. And failing that, we have a multitude of experts at AMBA, so leave that one with us, and we will try and come back to you. There are 3 more sessions in this festival as well, so save up your questions and hopefully we'll be able to address some of them in some of the other sessions as well. With that in mind, the next session is in it's in 90 minutes at, yes, no, it's in 2 hours. It's at 2:30 GMT here in the UK, and that is entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship, innovation and creativity, the skills needed to be successful in the modern world for startups and established businesses, being chaired by Jason Allen Scott. So that's at 2:30 this afternoon. You will have received links for this. Just when you click on the link, just make sure that you click on the link for session received more than one link for more than one session. So just make sure it's the link for session 2. So all that remains for me to say is thank you once again to our amazing panelists, Ritika, Ahab, Stephanie, and Udo. Thank you very much for taking part. And most of all, thank you to Anna. You ran an amazing session for 90 minutes. I think that intelligence, stamina, and grit. So thank you very much for that. And also thank you to Blue Prism for your support with this event, which made it possible. We really, really appreciate that. And yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to seeing you all in a couple of hours at 2:30. So thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you.
Guys.
Bye.
Have a lovely one.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.